Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Classic Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. On this show, we'll be focusing on the year that was 1981 and all of the great releases that year. Matt and I will be going through our Donington memories, selecting our ultimate bands that would have played at Donington. We'll tell you about the latest news, and we'll go through some hidden gems. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast subscribing services. And if you're already subscribed, tell your friends. But without further ado, let me introduce my partner in podcasting, Mr. Matt Rogers. Hey, Matt. How are you, mate?
Hi, Brian. Yeah, hi, Brian. Hi, Brian. I normally say hello, don't I? But
You do.
I'm going to say hi this time.
Hi.
Hello, Brian. Nice to see you, as always. On this cold and wintry evening. I'm sure it's cold and wintry where you are. It certainly is where I am. I'm wearing my diamond head woolly hat. As mentioned last time. So, news.
There
What's
are
in the
other
news?
woolly hats available, which are endorsed by other bands as well too.
That's very true, and they should be acquired because they're valuable merch to these bands. So
true.
News. We always kick off with news, and I have got an early contender for my song of the year.
Okay.
Do you remember at the end of last year we did our songs of the year and albums and all that sort of stuff? Well, I've got an early contender of my song of the year. Would you like to hear about it?
I would indeed.
So actually, funny enough, it was on an album that was released last year, so I think it counts because it's just been kind of put out as a single, related to that album, and it's by Corey Taylor, who his album you really rated, and you actually called it your favorite album of 2020.
It was definitely, yeah, it was a real surprise, and really enjoyed the album. Very diverse.
So he's released Samantha's Gone as a single, which is absolutely brilliant. I love it. It's got a killer riff. It's got a big hooky chorus. And if you thought Corey Taylor was all, masks and Slipknot and all that kind of thrash metal stuff, which is all good, by the way. This is much more kind of commercial sounding, much more melodic. And I can't get enough of it. I love it. I mean, I listen to it. If I could listen to it all day, I would. But I'm really interested into that. Corey Taylor and his new song, Samantha's Gone. I have to mention the fact that the Foo Fighters' new album is out. Just to let everyone know, really. I'm sure most people do know, but Medicine at Midnight by the Foo Fighters is out. I've listened to bits of it.
Yeah.
It's quite a departure. Well, not a departure, really. It's like a progression for Foo Fighters, but good songs all the same. If you're expecting, Breakout and, Monkey Wrench, that sort of thing, then you might be a little bit disappointed, but there's some good songs all the same. And then finally, in my little section of news, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, the erstwhile members of Rush. Rush finished in 2015, as most people know, and sadly we lost Neil Peart, the drummer, last year. So they've largely not been involved in music since 2015, Alex and Geddy.
Yeah.
And they have now put out a statement, which is quite a bold move, and of course has excited lots of people, Rush fans and rock fans in general, to say that they are eager to make music again, which I think is great. I don't personally expect, a new Rush, but I do think it would be great to hear some new music from Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee. So I, for one, am very excited. As to who's going to be with them, who knows?
Well, that's going to be the great question. And do you know what, Matt? They have enough pulling power between, as Rush are, that they don't necessarily have to have a permanent. It's not even a replacement for Neil. They could There are loads of drummers who would just be queuing up to have an opportunity to just play with them, and the type of music that Alex and Geddy would be putting together, and there's such a strong relationship between Alex and Geddy. They get on, they goof about, so it's lovely that the pair of them are up for playing new music again, and I think there'll be lots of people queuing up for an opportunity. And do you know what? They're not getting any younger. But
that's true. That's true.
And it's good that they're just picking up and they're just let's put new music out. And if they're enthusiastic about it, fair play to them. I'll be buying it as a lot of people will be.
Yeah, very exciting. Very exciting. So there's a few things that have caught my eye, right? This recently. I'm going to say this week. It hasn't been that long since we spoke last, but yeah, that's what's caught my eye recently.
Yeah, and keeping in that vein of progressive rock, there's been a few albums which have dropped in the last few days. Somebody who would be desperate to play with Alex and Geddy would be Mike Portnoy. Mike Portnoy's band, Transatlantic, have just put out their new album, which is called The Absolute Universe. It's actually been released as... There's potentially 3 versions of it. When the band got together to record the material, they couldn't decide whether they wanted to have a single album or a double album. So what the band decided to do was create both. So Neil Morse, the keyboard player, went off and made the album, which would be the single version of the album, and then Ronnie Stolt made the double album. So you go and you can have 2 albums. So I've been listening to it since I've got it. It's epic. It's epic, progressive, transatlantic. People go out and listen to it, buy it, stream it. You will be so impressed with this album if you like progressive rock. In the vein of progressive rock, somebody who is often dubbed as the new messiah of progressive rock is Steven Wilson. So Steven Wilson, who was in Porcupine Tree. So Steven's new album has just come out, which is called The Future Bites. I'm a great fan of Steven Wilson's material. I think he's great. Real departure, Matt. It's very electronic, very Tears for Fears, very 80s. It's maybe a little bit too much of a departure from me, but the video for the single, which has been on Facebook and social media, it's great. It's called Self.
Yeah.
So those are two my 2 bits of news for this week, Matt, in terms of probably more in the progressive rock field. So Steven Wilson's album and the Transatlantic album. I'll remember to put a couple of tracks on the Spotify playlist so people can have a listen to it and let us know in the comments on our Facebook and Twitter what they think of it. So yeah, new music for 2021. Keep on coming.
Right. It's great. No, I think it's great. And also I think that, and well said about progressive rock, because, we've touched upon it once or twice. And I think if you're a meat and potatoes kind of 4 on the floor kind of rock guy or girl, of course, and you like what you like, that's great. But give prog a look. It's not all bearded guys and 75-minute long guitar solos and it's Weird and Wonderful Time signatures, of course, but
yes.
It's not all Caravan and Camel and the Nice.
Yes,
good as they are, of course.
Absolutely,
there is some very cool prog stuff, as you say. You mentioned a couple, Dream Theater, Porcupine Tree, Transatlantic, and many others who are worthy of consideration. Maybe one week we should talk about, because I'm quite kind of narrow-minded when it comes to prog. I like Yes, I like Rush, I like Pink Floyd, I like Jethro Tull. That's pretty much where I begin and end when it comes to prog. But maybe one time we should talk a bit about prog, because it's worthy of discussion, because it is it's if you invest in it, it's great. And a lot of bands are, you talk about Iron Maiden, who we've talked about once or twice, heavily influenced by prog. And if you listen to their more sort of, last 20 years worth of material, there's a lot of long proggy, different time signatures and all sorts of stuff going on, songs. So there's plenty of prog about, and have a listen.
Lots of good bands like Marillion Marillion, from time to time, they have a resurgence. Their album Fear is fantastic. You know, they've headlined the Royal Albert Hall on a couple of nights. So yeah, we'll do a focus show on prog.
Yeah,
that'll be good.
Why don't we? It's our show. We do what we like.
We do what we like.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that was good. That was some good stuff there. I mean, I always enjoy this bit because I get to hear stuff that I haven't heard about before, because I just keep my head down and just pick up on bits and bobs. But that was really really interesting. So shall we move on?
We shall. It's our show. We can move on.
Yes, exactly. We'll move on. So last time, in time-honored fashion,
yes,
you set me the challenge of looking back to the year 1981, 40 years ago, I might add. Like we always do, we're going to talk about albums and events and what was going on in that year and all the rest of it. And you normally ask me at this stage how old I was.
How old were you, Matt, in 1981?
Thank you.
No prompting at all.
No, I thought you'd
seamless.
So thank you for asking. I turned 16 in
oh man,
in 81. I was 16 for the majority of the year. As you know, I was born in April. I've said that once or twice before. For anyone who's saving up to buy me a birthday present, 23rd of April. Anyway, so 1981. I turned 16, and it was quite an eventful year, actually.
Okay.
But and I was looking back at the albums that were released in that year, and I don't know whether I came into money or something in that year, but I bought loads. I bought loads of albums. I think if you were to plot the albums that I bought over on a graph, on a bar graph, then 1981 would probably be the highest peak in the bar graph, because I bought a humongous amount of albums that year.
How much would an album have been?
Well, good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think they're about $3.99.
Yeah, okay.
Something like that, which I suppose is probably in today's money like 15 quid or something. I guess. I don't know.
And would a single been about 50p, 79 pence? Maybe a
Mate,
quid?
you're not that much younger than me. Come on. It's not like I was dealing in... It's not like I was dealing in like pounds, shillings and pence.
Was it threepence halfpenny or something?
It was a farthing for a single, actually.
Actually, you weren't buying singles. You were buying 78s. That's big. Sorry.
You're on dangerous ground.
I am on
You're a thin out.
I'm sorry.
You're only a few... How old were you in 1981?
I was 12.
Oh.
I was 12.
12. Right. Anyway, so 1981 it was an interesting year. There was a lot going on. And some of the albums I bought have kind of stood the test of time. There were a couple of live albums that I would like to mention in dispatches, particularly Exit Stage Left and No Sleep Till Hammersmith, the Motorhead albums came out that year, which still, 40 years on, stand the test of time. Two mega albums. My favorite live album title of that year, by the way, is I still remember the title now, is a Ted Nugent album, and brilliant title, Intensities in 10 Cities. I just love that as a live album title. And there were loads. It's all like, so-and-so live and so-and-so at the Budokan and so-and-so this and the rest of it.
Yeah.
But Ted Nugent really got creative and imaginative when he named his live album Intensities in 10 Cities. I love that. I still do. But no, live albums, or rather albums in general. So there were loads. I mean, everyone was putting out albums, and it was that time when, as we said before, bands were putting out, an album a year, really, and maybe two in the same year. I remember Tigers of Pantang put out 2 albums that year. One of the stalwarts of the Nwabin movement. They put out Spellbound and Crazy Nights, both of which I bought, featuring, of course, Mr. John Sykes. I believe one of your favourite guitarists. But my top albums of that year, in no particular order, Killers came out, the second Iron Maiden album, the last to feature Paul Di'Anno. He was fired later that year to be replaced by Bruce Dickinson, of course, or Bruce, as he was known in those days when he was a Samson singer, which is a good album. Do you know that album very well, very much, Brian? Killers?
I listened to it the other week, just on the back of just on the back of when you posted up the picture of your much maligned and much missed first tour T-shirt from Iron Maiden, which Kelvin still has got his. He's still got his T-shirt. So
amazingly.
I started at Number of the Beast, so I didn't know the earlier stuff. So I went back to it and listened to it. Paul Di'Anno was a really good singer.
Yeah, he was a good singer. It wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but nor is Bruce Dickinson. And a lot of Maiden fans still hark back to the era of Paul Di'Anno. I mean, he was good. He was kind of raw and punky, and I remember he got referred to as being like a rough-hewn stable boy in one interview. I think it was Jeff Barton from Sounds referred to him as such, and it probably sums him up really, Paul Di'Anno. But yeah, sadly his voice didn't. He had other kind of things which occupied his time.
Yeah,
when he was in Maiden, few little demons, let's say, that he was involved in, and his voice was never really up to it. I read recently actually that he got to a gig in someone like Hull on that Killers tour, or maybe slightly before, and his voice was so shot that Steve Harris said, "No, we're not pulling the gig. People have paid money to come and see us." So Steve Harris sang all the lead vocals for the gig. I didn't know that until recently, actually, which says a lot about both Paul Di'Anno and Steve Harris, but mainly Steve Harris, in that he was saying, "I'm not going to let people down.
Yeah,
some have come a long way. It's whatever it was, Tuesday night or something." Yeah. And so Steve Harris, they did a gig as a 4-piece, and Steve Harris sang all the lead vocals.
There's a cracking version of Murders in the Rue Morgue with Bruce singing it, and for years I thought that was a track, because it's not on Number of the Beast, so I thought it was a B-side. And this is me not listening to the Killers, thinking, what a great track, I can't get it. Is it like a B-side? Of course it was on the Killers album, and that is genuinely one of my favorite Maiden songs. It's just the drumming, the riff. Murders on the Roof. It's just a great tune. So that's good kickoff for your first album of 1981.
Oh yeah, it's only the first one, isn't it? Blimey. we better crack on then. So Whitesnake's Come and Get It album came out in 1981, of course, which is another. It just it kind of, as we said before, kind of encapsulates that whole Whitesnake era. Some would say the classic lineup, and we talked a lot about Whitesnake, so we won't dwell on that. But I remember it because I bought the album. I saw Whitesnake on that tour. They were really on a high then. They'd done the Live in the Heart of the City album. They'd obviously had Love Hunter and Ready and Willing and so on. Those kind of early Whitesnake albums, and this was them on a high. So for those who haven't listened to it, Come and Get It is a fantastic album, and really Coverdale, is rarely sung better, and a great album from the classic Whitesnake lineup. Moving on, we mentioned Rush earlier. Moving Pictures by Rush came out in 1981, which again is part of that kind of that kind of triumvirate of albums, Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, and we mentioned Exit Stage Left earlier. I mean, if you're a Rush fan, it probably didn't get much better than that. And Exit Stage Left, Moving Pictures is held up alongside 2112 as probably their two, greatest albums, and justifiably so. There are some absolute corkers on Moving Pictures, Limelight, Red Barchetta, YYZ. I mean, it's just almost a perfect album. So that was Moving Pictures, and then finally, I'm not going to dwell too much on 1981 albums because there's so many. We could talk for hours. But finally, I couldn't not talk about For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, where of course possibly we got the influence of our podcast name. of course, possibly, but probably not. So for those about to rock, We Salute You by AC/DC came out. Brian Johnson's second album with the band, possibly not as good, and certainly didn't sell as well as Back in Black, which came out the year before, of course, but still, a good album in its own right. There's a title track is still in their set, and then there are other songs on there. Songs like "Let's Get It Up," of course, which is
great
about,
single. I remember the single coming out.
About raising a flag, I believe. I don't know, who knows. And then Night of the Long Knives and so on. So yeah, again, Brian Johnson was at his peak. I think that kind of early '80s period with AC/DC, and for those about to rock, I mean, the orange cover or the gold cover with the cannon. I mean, it's just kind of iconic. And as you know, they still use the cannon in their sets. And for those about to rock, I think it's their show closer, and has been probably since then.
Yeah.
And the following year, I actually saw AC/DC on that For Those About to Rock tour, and it was quite an event. So those are my albums of 1981. As I say, it was a good year. I mean, I did a lot that year. And a lot happened. But albums for you, Brian, what stands out for you from me 81?
When I looked at my top 5 albums of 81, and like you, I could have come up with a whole load of albums. It was really interesting that the first one that I thought of right off the bat was Journey's Escape.
Well, of course, yeah.
And album. which is an amazing album, and your hidden gem from a couple of episodes ago will have featured quite a lot of the material that was on the album. So there's an AOR classic, followed then by a band that you and I have seen on a number of occasions and who we love, is good old Foreigner.
Yep.
Foreigner 4 came out 1981. And when you look at the track listing of Foreigner 4, you've got all of the you've got really tracks on there which are, Waiting for a Girl Like You. And as a singer like me, it's a song you go, I'm never going to sing that in a month of Sundays. That is just Lou Graham's, it's his party piece. But you've got Jukebox Hero, Urgent. One of my personal favorite in that album is a track called Girl on the Moon. It's a lovely, never released as a single. There you have 2 melodic rock behemoths of albums which sold tens of millions of copies. Truckloads,
as they used to say.
And then a third band who went commercial in 1981, which was Difficult to Cure by Rainbow, to come out on the back of Down to Earth with Graham Bonnet, headlined Donington in 1980. Cozy's gone, Graham Bonnet's gone. We're basically, what's Richie going to do? And he brings in Joe Lynn Turner, Don Airey's still there. And when you look at an album like Difficult to Cure, and you've got a lead-off single, again, another Russ Ballard track, which is I Surrender.
Yeah.
I think that's their biggest, as much as I want to say Since You've Been Gone is their greatest hit. I actually think the highest charting single for Rainbow was I Surrender, which backs up your comment around in 1981, 82, 83, rock was in the charts. We were buying singles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's just a snippet, Matt, of 3 albums which came out and backed up probably a year earlier by even better albums. So there was a lot of great rock bands hitting a great vein of form. Yeah, 81, what a fabulous year in rock.
I know, amazing. It's really, it's so interesting when we dive into these years and, you see what was around. And, 1 minute, as you say, you think that 1980 was the best year for music and so on. But certainly 81 was, comes a close second. Just the quality of stuff that was out there. And we haven't mentioned, Priest and UFO and, plenty of other bands that had great albums out that year. So, 81. I'll tell you what else happened that year, which is quite interesting. The first issue of Kerrang came out.
Great.
So for those who don't know, Kerrang magazine was an offshoot from the general music magazine Sounds, kind of magazine newspaper that came out every week. And Kerrang was a rock, specific heavy metal rock magazine, which had its launch in 81. And I, for one, bought the first, however many issues, like 200 issues or something.
Yeah.
I don't have them now, of course. Thanks to my dad throwing them all away one year when I came home and said, "Dad, where's all those magazines in the they're in the cupboard?" And he said, "Oh, I threw them away ages ago." So that was the end of my Kerrang magazines. But so the first issue of Kerrang came out in 81 with the iconic picture of Angus on the front,
absolutely,
with his shirt off and everything. And so that was, for rock fans, that was kind of, again, it was like, this is our time, kind of thing. Kerrang. And then the other thing which I remember, because I was there, was, and this has been mentioned quite a lot over the years in the context of Ozzy Osbourne and his various antics. But Ozzy Osbourne, back in 1981, at a meeting with CBS, his then record company, felt the need to bring into the meeting 3 doves in his pockets. And I don't know why. I mean, it's all part of his kind of showmanship. And then during the course of the meeting, I don't know whether he was, had a couple of drinks or something, or he was getting a bit bored, but he felt the need to bite the head off of one of these doves. And it must have been a sort of preempted, because it was photographed, and there are pictures on the internet. If you look around, you'll find them. And it was quite shocking at the time. And then it led into the whole thing about Ozzy being the Prince of Darkness, biting the head off bats and all the rest of it. But that happened in 1981. So that was kind of a seminal moment, I suppose, in Ozzy's career. Yeah. And I suppose, in a sense, in the sort of grossness that then possibly followed down some channels of rock. It was a good year for festivals. There was the Heavy Metal Holocaust at Port Vale Football Stadium, which I was quite interested in, but I didn't go. No. Because I was spending my money, my hard-earned pocket money, on going to Castle Donington. I've been to quite a few festivals since, as you know, because you and I have been to quite a few together over the years. And if people are listening, if one of our 10 listeners has never been to a festival before, I would recommend it, because it's great fun and in lots of respects. But back in the 80s, it was a different kettle of fish. And I went to Donington 81. I've touched on this before, actually, haven't I? I went to Donington 81, the Monsters of Rock, as it was known in those days. It was the second festival. And I'd heard about how good the previous year had been. So I decided to go to the second one, 1981, headlined by AC/DC, Whitesnake with their Blue Oyster Cult, and others. And, it was a war. It was a war zone, as I've said before. It was, by today's standards, quite a grueling experience. Which leads us something nicely, Brian, to it's been talking about the Donington Monsters of Rock. And we're not talking about Download, are we? Because that's a relatively recent phenomenon. But so Monsters of Rock, the Download, or rather the precursor to Download, I should say, started in, as I said, 1980, when rock was at its, or heavy rock in this country was at its peak. And you and I thought it'd be quite a nice idea to put together what we think would have been the best of the festivals or best of the acts that were actually went or played at those respective 80 through 96 Monster Rock festivals, and also to look at a kind of fantasy bill of bands that never played the Monster Rock Festival in this country, but we would have liked to have seen.
Correct.
Which is quite interesting. And on the latter,
it is.
Yeah, the latter was quite an interesting list. I mean, I thought of a few, and I thought, wow, they never played. So let's talk about the bands that we did play, and if you like, accumulation of what would have been our kind of, I guess, our perfect Monsters of Rock
Exactly. This was fun to do, and it made me go through. The all of the lineups, and what I remembered quite a lot was good old BBC in the UK. Used to play. There was a few simulcasts. I think that's the proper. I think 1990 they fully broadcast all of the Monsters of Rock at Donington. I think in 1994, and then it was. But for us on a Friday night, when we were listening to the Friday Rock Show, one of the things that you always look forward to was when Tommy Vance would play a set from Monsters of Rock, and it would be either Gary Moore or whoever, and I loved it. Donington to me was the holy grail of festivals, and your big bands were playing. So the way in which we'll do it, Matt, is
Yes.
we will do it from our opening acts, right the way through to our headliners, and we will compare and contrast.
Okay.
And then what we'll do in the Facebook page, if you're okay with it, this is the way I haven't prepared for this. We will put our festival lineups, yours and mine, on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And our 10 listeners can decide if they could buy a ticket to one of these festival lineups, which one would they go for?
Oh, I see. So you've created this kind of competition between us. I see. Is there a prize? Because I've said before, I haven't got a budget for a prize. By the way, it's just the honor of winning.
The honor of winning. We haven't won anything for a while. And it's not. No. It's our listeners and viewers on our Facebook page. They're the ones. They're deciding. It's not you and me. And then you can set me a challenge. Anyway.
Okay. Yes.
Let's kick off.
You want to go? Yes. Let's indeed go first. Go for it.
So
your favorite of opening up at Donington. Then.
This was easy for me. 1990. The opening act at Donington, Monsters of Rock in 1990 was Thunder. Brilliant set, band on the up. Easy peasy for me. So I'm okay. opening up Bry Fest with Thunder. How about you?
Okay. That's a good choice. Good choice. I'm going to hark back to 1981, and actually, the band I'm going to go with to open the festival was actually second on the bill in 81. Is a band called Blackfoot. Now, Blackfoot, if you don't know, were I should say I suppose you could categorize them as a southern rock band, but they were quite hard and heavy, and did some absolutely brilliant songs. And Standing in the Rain in Donington 81, when Blackfoot came on with their fantastic songs, On the Run, just a great spectacle. So my choice for opening act would be the 1981 version of Blackfoot.
And would Ricky Medlock have been in the band at that time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ricky Medlock was singer, guitarist. Yeah. You had Charlie Hargrett on guitar, Jackson Spires, and Greg T. Walker. So a great band, classic lineup. Sadly, one or two of those guys have passed away. And of course, Ricky Medlock's now playing in Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yes, yeah,
where he started, ironically,
as a drummer.
Indeed. So my opening act would be Blackfoot.
Blackfoot, what a two good openers.
Yep.
So next on the bill for me, after Thunder have left the stage and everybody's been singing Dirty Love. The next man that comes onto the stage, diminutive in stature and mighty in voice, from his early 1983 appearance, I would be going with Ronnie James Dio with Vivian Campbell on guitar. I have to get our Vivian message in.
Well, good choice. A good choice. I was there in 83 when they played their inaugural, that was their inaugural appearance in the UK. And good choice. Second, number 2 on the bill? They'd be like the next, like midday, they'd be on. I think that's very cruel to Dio, frankly. But okay, fair enough. Good choice.
Yeah,
good choice.
And you're going with, and who's your second on Matt Fest?
Well, I couldn't resist this because I was there, and they were fantastic value at the time. Is Slade. So Slade were, for those who don't know, they were very extremely popular in the 70s in Britain. Never really made it that big elsewhere, but just some great party rock songs. And they had a resurgence in the early 80s. They kind of latched onto the whole heavy rock thing.
Yeah.
They had a great set at I think it was Reading Festival 1980, and played Donington 81, and they were fantastic. And there was a picture in Kerrang. I've showed you this, Brian. There's a picture in Kerrang at the time, and I'm sure I could see myself in the crowds of
tens of thousands
of long-haired 16-year-old
wearing
boys,
black t-shirts,
wearing black t-shirts, long hair, leather jackets. I'm certain I could see myself. And I was there. I was in row 36, and my hair, because I had quite long hair in those days, as you know. I was in row 36. My hair was in row 40. So we were. It was packed. It was packed. I'd say it was good. So I'm going to go with Slade.
Okay, that's good.
So that would be my second on the bill.
Okay, so for me,
after Blackfoot.
So Ronnie James has just left the stage now.
Mm-hmm.
He's done it. It's 1983. He's done some little bits of Rainbow, Dio, Black Sabbath. I thought I'm going to go with a band who, in 1985, were just breaking out from San Francisco. Third on the bill. I'm going with Metallica. So I think Metallica in 1985. 1985-86, Thrash was coming out. Master of Puppets, which is a great album. You know, Cliff Burton, a phenomenal virtuoso bass player. His that's a great album.
Sadly missed, of course.
Sadly missed. And I think in the middle of the day, obviously, Metallica now are a band that can headline, festivals, etc. But can you imagine in 1985, Rats just come off stage, and Metallica comes on in 1985, and that must have just been an assault on the senses for anybody who was, what's this new sound coming over from America? And you'd have had this, the Slayers, the Anthraxes, and Metallica were really leading the forefront. So 85, Metallica was third in the bill for me. So I'd go with Metallica, Matt.
I like it. It's a good choice. Good choice. Hard to compete with that, actually. I suppose if you kind of visualize 1985 vintage Metallica, they'd only been going for 4 years. When you think about it, they've been playing for 4 years, and they're on the bill at Monsters of Rock. I mean, that's not bad, is it?
That's not bad.
In between Rat and Bon Jovi.
Uh-huh.
I think that's pretty good. Not many bands that have been going for three or 4 years would find themselves possibly there.
I wouldn't have fancied being Bon Jovi or Marillion, because 1985 was pre-Slippery When Wet, so they were touring on the back of 7,800 Fahrenheit, which is an alright album, but they're 2 albums in, and Metallica will have just slayed Donington.
No pun intended.
No, exactly. No pun intended. They would have just, would have laid it all out there, and Bon Jovi would have been calm on stage going, In and Out of Love, Tokyo Road and stuff. But the greatness of festivals, Matt. You know what I mean? People get, we've seen Megadeth, we've seen lots and lots. That's the beauty of festivals. You can go and watch who you like, and you can go to the bar, and so Metallica was good for me. Who have you got as your next artist to follow Slade?
Well, firstly, I want a name for my festival, because I feel a little bit left out now. Actually,
okay,
I
yeah.
know you've been using. Can we call it Matt? Can I call it Matt Stock?
Matt Stock. You can have Matt Stock, and I'm Bryfest.
Okay. So next on the bill at Matchstock is the aforementioned Bon Jovi, who, as you say, they played various, they kind of worked their way out the bill, the Monsters of Rock. And I've seen them a few times over the years, again, probably at their peak. And they are great live. I mean, they're fantastic. All their hits, probably 1985, as you say, they were probably on the back of their first couple of albums.
Yeah.
But certainly they were on the cusp of mega stardom, of course, with Slippery and New Jersey and so on, as we discussed last time. So I would go with third on the bill would be John Bon Jovi and his friends from New Jersey. Bon Jovi.
You go with Bon Jovi. That's a good shout.
Thank you.
Good shout indeed. I can just now. Can you imagine it if we were saying which decade we were going to set our festival in? Can you imagine all of the mud and everything being chucked? I would prefer going to a festival in the 2000s, Matt, where we've got good hygiene and nice camping. I wouldn't do what you did in the 80s. I do.
No. Well, I told you before, you came away from those festivals kind of flinching for days on end. It was like, the modern equivalent of being shell-shocked because you were so conscious of being hit by a bottle that you were ducking,
yes,
for days on end afterwards. So anyway, Nick, that was Bon Jovi. So we're getting towards the top of the bill now.
We are now, and this one, I'm going to tug at the heartstrings, Matt.
Okay.
And this is a band who was just genuinely on the cusp of absolute mega stardom. In 1986, the first real shows of Def Leppard with Rick Allen after his accident. To have Def Leppard at Donington, they would have played lots of material from some of the material from Hysteria, which had still to be released. But to have Def Leppard at Donington and at that time and where they were as a band would have been a privilege to see them. A little bit of an emotional one there to have Def Leppard as third in my bill.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Do you know what is interesting about the 86 festival? So a band called Warlock opened the festival, first on the bill, fronted by Doro Pesch.
Yes.
Now, I'm staggered by this in a sense, but she was the first female performer to be on the stage.
Wow.
At Monsters of Rock. So for 6 years, it had been, and it was pretty male dominated. I mean, it was probably like 90% men that went. But Warlock, fronted by Dorothea Pesch, were the first. She was the first female performer to perform at the Monsters of Rock at Donington, strangely enough. Which by today's standards is kind of strange when you think about it, when you've got, so many bands fronted by women, including women and so on. So obviously times have changed, fortunately, for the best. So next on my bill, you're going to like this because I know you've seen these guys a few times. In fact, you and I have seen them a few times. I would have the Scorpions. Or Scorpions. As you know, they played at the first festival. They played again in 86. At that festival with Def Leppard actually, and with Warlock. So I would certainly, great festival band.
Yeah,
tons of hits, put on a great show. I rest my case. There you go.
Ooh, that's a great. I haven't seen them in a festival environment when you've got the Zoo, No One Like You, Rocky Like a Hurricane, which is just. It's a classic dad rock anthems staple on the CD. I'm sure it's played billions of times on Spotify.
Absolutely. So that would be my fourth on the bill at Matchstock.
So Def Leppard have just walked off the stage.
I love the way you set the scene.
I do. Yeah.
Strolling off.
Yep. The young Joe Elliott is waving goodbye to his adoring crowd. Uncle David is just standing in the wings, going, "Lovely boy, fantastic, Joseph. Very nice. Here's a nice glass of whiskey. Have that. I'll see you in the dressing room. And
is that your David Coverdale?
I no, you do the David Coverdale. I can't do David. How can David Coverdale be done in a Northern Ireland accent? I know.
That's true.
Exactly. I'm trying to. Hey, can you imagine me going? Here's a song for you. Doesn't work.
Yes,
doesn't work.
Fair enough. So you'd have Coverdale Page next on the bill, would you?
No, I wouldn't have Coverdale Page. I would have Mr. Trouser Snake himself, the wonderful David Coverdale. Obviously, I've got Whitesnake second in the bill. We know that they've headlined the festival. Ironically, they were second on the bill the year you went, which was 1981.
Indeed, and they headlined in '83 when I went as well. Yeah. Yes, they're quite a kind of a stalwart of Download and obviously previously Donington. And as I was telling you earlier, David Coverdale, when I saw him at Download in 2019, still refers to it as Donington. Mm-hmm. Good evening, Donington.
Yes,
nice to be here.
Yeah,
that's my Coverdale impersonation.
There you go.
And he can't bring himself to call it Download, of course. He's old school.
Exactly. And I just remember the buying on video the '83 headline show. Cozy was in the band, Mel Galley. I remember getting the video, and I can remember where, they were playing some material off the Slide It In album, which hadn't been released, and it was just it was the Whitesnake Commando stuff,
That's right.
all the, and that was just a great. That was a great, and do you know what I thought as well too, Matt? He would have had the band cooking, and it would have been. You kind of want to be a special guest at a festival, and you're kind of going, we've got the hits, but we'll give a real good go to see if we can top the headliner. The headliner of all the whiz bang, pyro and all that kind of stuff. But it must be nice. And can you imagine David Coverdale and whichever incarnation of Whitesnake would have been there? That band would have just been kicking, and as an audience, you'd have been going, wow. Whitesnake are just amazing. Who's going to top that? So Whitesnake are my special guests.
I like it.
Matt Stock special guests.
Matt Stock special guest would be Judas Priest.
Ooh.
Who I remember they played at the first Monsters of Rock in 1980, and I've said this before. I was and I'm a big Judas Priest fan. And I would certainly have them as special guests on the if you like the fantasy Monsters of Rock. I mean probably at that era as well. I mean that kind of as we said before, that sort of 79 through 83, 4 era Priest at their peak. So that would be my special guest, Matt Stock. I knew you said Wayne Stock then. Matt Stock would be Judas Priest, of course. That classic early 80s lineup. So we get to the headliners, don't we, Brian?
We do. This is where
I went all. What's his name? I forgot the name of the guy. Anyway, we get to headliners, don't we, Brian?
We do. We get to headliners. So David's just walked off stage. He's got a towel around him. Joe Elliott's just walked up to him and gone, good set, good set. And then Ronnie James Dio comes down. Ronnie James Dio meets Dave. He meets David in the corridor, and then they decide let's go into my dressing room and discuss Richard. Let's have a discussion about Richard and our time with Mr. Blackmore. Let's have a singer's seance.
This is you're setting quite a scene, actually. I can picture all this.
You imagine a nice bottle of red wine or brandy. Brandy. You can imagine Coverdale with his brandy, and Ronnie James would be in his ethereal clothing, standing with his sword.
Well, even though he's finished about an hour ago, he's still holding his sword, is he?
He is exactly.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
I suppose.
And Vivian's auditioning for Whitesnake. He's like,
Yes.
Yes.
Or Def Leppard, of course, depending on
Or yeah,
you know
exactly.
which band he fancies at some point joining.
Yeah. So
Okay.
David. So anyway,
Headline.
David's left the stage. A northeastern gentleman that he is from Saltburn, or actually, David would call himself a Yorkshireman. But then you would have a man from the northeast of England coming to the stage at the side with his hat and his microphone and his Harley Davidson shirt. And it would be Mr. Brian Johnson and AC/DC. Pick whichever genre you want, but there is nothing for me that surpasses the 1991 headlining set of AC/DC. They killed all comers. And AC/DC at Monsters of Rock at Donington, having headlined it as many times that they have, and whoever is coming below them, they are just, to me, they're the headline act, Matt. And you're just going to get the hits, and but you're going to get, they're a working class band, and I think there's something about AC/DC. Come on, no frills, play the songs, play the hits. Yes, you'll have the 21 gun salute, but there's not much filler and not much. You get the songs and you get a great performance. So AC/DC, subject to contractual negotiations with the band, will be headlining Bryfest, unless you've got them in yours, and then we'll have to get into a bidding war with AC/DC.
Bidding war.
So Bryfest headliners, the mighty AC/DC.
Good choice. It's hard to argue with that, actually, because they headlined, I think it's about 3 times in 11 years. So yeah, they were certainly obviously, on top of their game. I would see your AC/DC and I would raise you one Van Halen.
Oh no!
Headliners of Matstock, 1980 something.
Which Van Halen, though, Matt?
Well, of course, the classic. That's a good choice. Good point. But obviously, they've played in 1984. They weren't even headliners. Actually,
No.
they were down the bill to AC/DC, or second special guest, let's say. So, and it was David Lee Roth's final appearance with Van Halen in the UK. Not that they played a lot in the UK with David Lee Roth, but that was his final appearance with him. So I think you'd be hard pushed, and I know absolutely. I get AC/DC traditional headliner, but in my little fancy world, Judas Priest have just strutted their stuff and done a fantastic set. I'm doing your thing now, and Rob Halford's just parked his motorbike round the back, and they're off to the dressing room. Careful.
I thought you were going to say Rob Halford's just got he's got the bike out, he's gone round to the petrol station, he's filled it up, and he's away home. Because Birmingham won't that be far. Birmingham won't that be far away from Donington. He could be. Do you know what? You're very kind to Rob, because by putting Judas Priest as special guest, he could be home by 10.
It's true. He could be home for match of the day, couldn't he?
Oh God! and it's so considerate of you to put an American band on a Saturday night at Matstock, because they won't be bothered about match of the day, because they won't follow English football.
Not interested
yeah.
in match of the day. But what they are interested in is playing Monsters of Rock, 1980 something.
Yes.
Or rather, I should say, Matstock. I forgot the name of it then. Matstock, 80 something. It's headlined by the mighty Van Halen, featuring Alex and Eddie Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and of course David Lee Roth. And that's it.
That's fantastic.
That's it. I rest my case for Matt Stott, 1980 something.
Okay, so what we'll do, people, for those of you, who are still listening,
for those
to
about
us,
to rock, yes,
yeah, those who are still listening to us, and they're not listening to two men laughing too much. Matt and I will put our respective festival lineups on our Facebook page, and you can choose which one that you like.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
That's our walk through Dannington.
Yeah, that's great. I enjoyed that. That was great fun. Thanks, Brian. So, Brian, hidden gems time.
Excellent.
This is my favourite part of the podcast. Actually, I'm rubbing my hands in glee, as you can see. I'm quite excited because I get to we get to talk about hidden gems, and I get to surprise you, and I like to see your reaction to what I throw up. Before we do that, I forgot to say. So I talked about 1981 earlier. I need to give you a year, do I not?
You do indeed. Gosh, we could have gone without selecting a year for me. How very bad. Know.
What would have happened? We would have had to just make it up as we went along, much as we are already. So I am going to give you a year. It doesn't seem that long ago, but actually it was. I'm going to give you the year 2000.
Excellent.
As your year in rock for next time.
The first.
You okay with that?
I am that's interesting. Yeah, 21 years ago.
I know. There are people born in 2000 that have their 21st now, which is this year, I should say. So year 2000. Do you accept that challenge?
I accept that challenge. That's going to be interesting to go back to the year 2000 and looking at what albums I physically bought and which albums, because I would have been in the iTunes downloading period. So really? I'm gonna have to do a lot of digging about on that for my top albums of 2000. And I would have been I'm getting old now, Matt. 2000.
I know. Long time ago. Y2K and all that. But that's your year for next time.
Excellent.
So hidden gems. I'll let you go first.
Oh, hidden gems. So, and I'm listeners, we're really interested to see which one of us pulls it out of the bag this week, because Matt's on a bit of he's been trumping me for this last few episodes on the hidden gems, so I'm up in my game. So, 1980s, Matt, we've talked about some amazing singers through the episodes. We've talked about Steve Perry. You did your hidden gem with Journey. We've talked about Uncle David. We've talked about Ronnie James. We've talked about. Here's a singer that we haven't mentioned yet, and this is and I'll say his name and say the first thing that comes to your mind. John Waite.
John Waite.
Yes.
Ah, yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Babies singer.
Of course, you would. Everybody else on the planet would go Missing You, the ginormous bazillion selling single which landed on the map, and you.
I know Missing You. I know Missing You as well. But of course, he was the Babies singer.
He was indeed.
But yeah, Missing You was I think it was about 84. That was a humongous song, wasn't it? I don't know what album that was off. Obviously, his solo album, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on the album. It was a great album called No Breaks, which No Breaks I can't really put as a hidden gem because it was released in 1984, and you had great singles like Missing You, Tears, and his band were absolutely top notch. He had Carmen Rojas and Earl Slick from the David Bowie band in his band. If you go and check the YouTube clips of that band, that was a really hot band. So I've set the scene. My artist, hidden gems artist, is going to be John Waite, but I'm going to go to 1987, and John released an album called Rover's Return, and my album, hidden gem album for this episode is Rover's Return. It is an absolute belter of an album. 3 tracks I'm going to call out for, and I'm going to put these tracks on the Spotify playlist. I'll call out some great ones. The final track in the album is called Big Time for Love, which is superb. It's quite a rock album. It's not the melodic AOR. It's a rocking album, but opening tracks these times are hard for lovers, and the third track is a track called Encircled. Now, for anybody listening on the podcast, if you've come this far, I would be really interested for a track that was recorded in 1987. What song does it remind you of? Because when I listen to Encircled on that album, it reminds me of another hard rock song that was recorded a few years later. Let me know in the comments what you think the song reminds you of, or which artist it reminds you of. So my hidden gem for this episode, Matt, is the fabulous John Waite from his rock album, Rover's Return.
I like it. Well, that's a great choice. I don't know the album, but I will listen to it. And I might be one of those people that tries to predict which song you were referring to that came out later.
Please do.
Yeah, good choice. I do remember that, that, as you say, that album from '84 that was huge, wasn't it? I mean, he was on the crest of a wave then. That's a good choice. Really good.
And for years, I thought he was an American. I didn't know he was a Lancashire boy.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wonder whether Rover's Return is a connection with his Lancashire roots. Obviously, with the
it's his Coronation Street album.
Yeah. Of course, not everyone who listens to our podcast will know what Coronation Street is. Of course,
that's very true.
Right, you ready?
I am.
So my hidden gem, Brian, is strange enough from the year 2000, which I set you earlier as your year in rock next time, and it's an album featuring the Black Crowes and Jimmy Page.
No,
and it's yes,
no.
So it's no, I haven't trumped you again, have I? Oh no. What have I done? It's live at the Greek, Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes, and basically it's a live album recorded at the Greek Theatre in Los Angeles, and it is essentially Led Zeppelin songs. There's a couple of Yardbird songs in there. There's a couple of there's a BB King song in there. There's all sorts going on, but essentially it's Led Zeppelin songs performed by the Black Crowes and Jimmy Page. And I listened to it recently, and it's great. I mean, it's 21 years old, and it's stood the test of time, which is probably testament to the fact that the Led Zepp songs from the early 70s have also, the late 60s, early 70s, have also stood the test of time. So yeah, my hidden gem this week, young Brian, is Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes live at the Greek. There you go. I rest my case again.
All right, we're gonna have to change this round because I seem to go first, and then have a really nice hidden gem, and then you knock it out of the park once again with. But I have to say, what a hidden gem album, and for anybody who's coming to Zeppelin, anybody who likes the Black Crowes, you walk away from that album going, poof, they're Jimmy Page collaborates not with a lot of people. And he must have seen something in the Black Crowes. Oh, Matthew, what a hidden gem. I do. I'm going to dig that out. I haven't listened to that for ages.
Yeah, it's good. I listened to it recently. It's really good. So that was Hidden Gems for this week. I think we should draw a veil over things, Brian.
Yes.
But before we go, I just want to give a shout out to some of our new listeners in Portugal. Hello, Portugal. We've got some new friends in Portugal. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thank you.
And also Canada. Thank you for listening, new friends and probably family in Canada. So thank you for listening. And wherever you are in the world, thank you for listening to us ramble on for an hour. we truly appreciate it, don't we, Brian? Because we enjoy doing this. But the fact that people actually listen to it is great. And so thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. And for all of those people that take the time to message to all of the posts that we put up on Facebook as well too, and interact with us as well and give us some good ideas, it's always great Always great to hear from everybody, whichever platforms we are using. So on that note, Matthew, I bid you farewell. Have a good rest of the week until we meet again.
You too, my friend.
I'll see you soon. See everybody. Good night now.
See ya. Bye. Rock on.
For Those About to Pod, We Salute You is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time.